Good evening, good evening, good evening, and thank you for joining us here on blackdoctor.org. I am Ellis Dean, the Director of Digital Programming at blackdoctor.org, and welcome to our Healthy Kids Summit. This is our second annual Healthy Kids Summit, and we did this last summer, and it was such a big hit right at the beginning of the school year that we said, let's run it back and do it again. And so the Healthy Kids Summit is really a series of panels designed to help you as parents get your child prepared not only for school but for life. And so we have four wonderful panels tonight. We're going to be kicking off with a panel about digital learning. We know how things are different than it was when we were in school. We had a lot of pencil and paper, but now it's a lot more digital. So we've got a panel of experts talking about digital learning. Then we're going to be talking about overcoming childhood obesity because we know as a society we're getting heavier and heavier, and childhood obesity lingers into life and it can cause more problems as we become adults. Some of us know that more than others, but we're going to make sure that your children, we're going to give you what you need to tell your children to help your children overcome childhood obesity. Then we're going to have a whole panel talking about when I was your age, all of that stuff is over. So we're going to be talking about how do we parent in today's age with all of this stuff that they've got going on, way different. They're not drinking out of hoses anymore, right? They're doing a whole lot of different things, and so we've got to make sure that we are up to school and up to snuff on being good parents. And then finally, we're going to be talking about online access and is that really impacting their mental health? And so we know is it developmentally appropriate? Some of the things that they have access to with these smartphones and all this other stuff going on, is it developmentally appropriate, and is it impacting their self-esteem and their mental health? And so that's all we have. So, but we're going to kick this first one off with what I like to say. This is the best panel, right? Because we're going to be talking about your children's learning, and so we've got four school administrators, educators on three. I'm sorry, three. I'm not four. I'm three educators here talking, going to be telling you everything you need to do and know about teaching, helping your children navigate the digital learning community. So I know you didn't sign on to hear me talk, so let's get to our guests. First off, we have Miss Ashley Harden, and we also have Miss Carmen Willingham, and we have Dara Braddock. And so I'm gonna let y'all tell what you do and how you do it. So we'll start with you, Ashley. Kind of just introduce yourself and let people know your role in education.
Hello, everybody. Again, Ashley Harden. I'm currently an e-learning instructional designer with Tarrant County College in Fort Worth, Texas. This is my first year in this position. Previously, for 15 years, I was a K-12 chemistry, high school chemistry teacher, and I was a blended learning chemistry teacher right before COVID. Then I became a blended learning specialist. And then the last 2 years, I was a virtual learning specialist with K-12, helping instructors to work online and students who are working online and taking their classes online. And so digital learning is literally what I do. It's what pays the bills. So I love it for my own job as well as I know the benefits that it can have for students.
Well, can I tell you we had a panel of experts, e-learning specialists right there. Boom. Next up, we've got Carmen Willingham.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carmen Willingham. I am the superintendent for the Academy for Business and Technology District, K through 12. Our elementary school is located in Dearborn, Michigan, and our middle high school is located in Melvindale, Michigan. I've been in education for at least 30 years. Um, I taught in the Detroit public school system, and after that, I became an administrator with the Leona Group. And now, as I stated, I serve as the school leader for the Academy for Business and Technology Middle High School, but I'm also the superintendent of our entire district. And so that includes the elementary school as well as the middle high school. I'm happy to be here.
So we got an e-learning specialist and a superintendent. All right, Dara, finish us off.
Okay. I am Dara Braddock. I am an educator in Maryland. I currently teach high school. I was a ninth grade high school teacher last year. I'll be doing English 11 and SAT prep this year. In addition, I am an academic coach, so I do a lot of after school tutoring. I do sign language tutoring, and I'm also the professional development lead teacher in our building. So, in charge of making sure that we stay up to stuff on when it comes to things like digital learning and the new challenges that are approaching our students as they come available.
Look, I'm so impressed with y'all already. So I want to start off by saying thank you for being there for our children. My mother was a teacher. I got a family full of teachers, and so I do fully respect being that teacher's kid and having to stay after school and all that stuff with mom. I do respect what you all do immensely, and they're making it harder on you. Every year, it seems like. But we're not here to talk about the bad. We're going to talk about how we can overcome some of the challenges. So, um, Carmen, as superintendent, I know technology moves us forward, right? It helps us continue to uh, take on new challenges as a society, and it has adoption of technology, digital learning has entered the classroom. So, um, how has that impacted the role that educators have in the classroom today with more digital learning available to them?
I think that it's impacted teachers in the classroom using the digital learning piece because I believe that it's expanded and broadened things that they can do. I think they have they can reach more people. I think that they can reach more people at the same time, meaning that with the digital learning, the internet or using the resources for our smart boards or our Promethean boards is now structured so that the students, if just for an example, if they want to learn about China, they don't have to learn about China the boring way, reading reading a book. Now they can go to digital learning and they can actually go to China while they're in Michigan. And
Right.
so that's just one example. But I just think that now it has broadened the resources and where what teachers can do is so much more utilizing the digital platform, and they don't have to just stick to worksheets. Well, that's old school for sure. Books, we still use books, but even using the ebooks, versus um, the hardcover books, that's more appealing to the students today because we know that they love technology. Most of them do. And so they can use the ebook, or again, they can go somewhere else in the world or in the city, in their city or different states, and all at the same time. And so I believe that the e-learning definitely has impacted our society in a positive way, not negative.
So, Ashley, as an e-learning instructor, what are the things that you like about e-learning, and what are some challenges that you're facing as an instructor?
So, one of the biggest things, I was STEM. I taught chemistry. I went from chemistry, paper, pencil, heavy textbook, extremely boring, right? Until, all right, let's do some online simulations. Let's learn some things in different ways that are abstract. You think about protons, electrons, neutrons, but now we're on the computer and we're doing it. So it's easier for them to process information if they get to manipulate things and move things around. So you have more interaction and more engagement possibilities, especially in STEM. And for our students, our Black students who don't always have that access and didn't have that before, now we do. It's in their hand. They can see the possibilities of what they're learning now to connect it to their careers. And so for me, it's the possibilities that are out there, right? We can start minimizing the probabilities of where they come from, the socioeconomic, because now we have digital, we have more access for a lot of our students, right? Now we'll say the hard part, being in the instructional designer roles, I'm also supporting teachers to say, hey, jump on board. This will be really cool for students. But then that is something else for them to learn, right? And it's a lot on educators' plates right now. So it's trying to figure out how are we going to improve the experiences for students while not also not putting too much on our teachers to say, hey, there's got 5 new cool things I want to teach you. So it's that balance of getting them on board to improve the learning and experiences for our students.
If I could jump in too, I wanted to speak to that. Um, on the educator side of it, the e-learning is fantastic in terms of, like Ms. Willingham said, being able to just give them the world right there at their fingertips, and then being able to have access to things and go places they may not otherwise be able to access or be able to see. There has to be an important balance with that, though, because in addition to education being academic, it's also very social. And so we have to find that delicate balance of how much computer screen time do I give them and still allow them to develop socially so that we don't have, mechanical zombies. I mean, the thing that we have to understand too is our students, when we're taking them through these digital platforms, is a lot of our students are tech dependent, but not necessarily tech savvy. And so making sure that they have the skills and the background to do what it is we need to do. We know just kind of across the country what a nightmare the pandemic was for a lot of us. And so when people hear e-learning, a lot of teachers immediately freeze up because it takes them back to being thrown into that pandemic. And it makes Ms. Harden's job just that much more difficult. It's like, please don't say technology, don't say computer, don't say online. I don't want to hear it. I just want to go back to my books. I want to go back to my paper. But we're not teaching the same students pre-pandemic that we're teaching now. And you can't go completely back one way, but you can't go completely forward the other way. So it's a really delicate dance in finding that balance.
It's funny. I always think I'm applying this to me, and people that work tend to, once they find something that works, they want to keep doing that, right? And I know, because my mother was the same way. I remember going from the old school crank Xerox machine. Y'all remember with the purple? Yeah. Okay. Am I going back too far? Okay, because I used to have to stand there and crank it. Boy, go on, crank that thing. And I have to crank it forward. To now, we're all on iPads and laptops and on phones and everything like that. And so Ms. Willingham, how do you, as a superintendent, you've got multiple teachers and everyone has their way. How do you get them to move forward in the digital learning space that is not only the best for the students, but comfortable for them as an educator?
I try to make sure that I make it comfortable for everyone, and meaning that the seasoned teachers, that's what we'll call them, the millennials, or now I think it's another word for the group that's even younger than the millennials. Just trying to make sure that we understand that we can learn from one another and from the students. I have learned a lot about technology from the students. And so I don't want us to be ashamed or embarrassed. I want it to be a safe space for us to all learn together, to work together. And I think that once you make people feel comfortable and they don't have to be embarrassed or say, oh, I don't know this, I don't either, but not being afraid to ask and making sure that we find out what's needed, what people need to learn, meaning the seasoned teacher, all of our staff, not just teachers, our support staff, that we're all at least on one page and we have one vision, success for all of our students. We all want our students to succeed. I always say, by any means necessary, as long as it's legal. That's what we're going to do. And my staff cracks up, but that's my statement. Like, we are going to do everything that we can to make sure that our students are successful, and we're going to do it together. And so it's safe for everyone to show what they learn and share. And then if you don't know, just ask and we'll find out, and we'll work together to find out. So creating that comfortable space where everybody feels comfortable with one another to learn from one another.
So Ashley, we're in that kind of intersection. There's that word. I know that's a bad word in some places. That intersection of the digital age and the information age. So these students have so much more information, because I just had what was in that book, right? And if it wasn't in that book or in that encyclopedia that was on my parents' shelf, I didn't know it, right? And so, but now they have access with Google and Bing and now AI, that they've got so much more access. How do we balance that with a curriculum of information that are standards that are set that you have to teach, with all of this other stuff that's around it that could be making it more confusing for students that aren't as fast or, as Dara put it, tech savvy?
I think that was a lot to unpack. AI is a whole other topic, right? But I think that part of it is don't just say no. There's so many educators who are like hardline AI, no, it's bad, right? But we also have to prepare these students to use AI because if they're going to go into the
Mhm.
workforce is already using it. So we have to prepare them in a way. And as educators, what I like to do is not just say, hey, this is good, but let them experience how they can use it themselves. So if you're going to make curriculum or write curriculum, let AI help you, right?
Mm.
Let it help to write your assessments and to help make your lessons more interesting, right? Some content is just static. History is history. This is how it happened. This is the way it happened, right? But in English, we all have to read this book a year after year, and then you got to write this type of paper, and in chemistry, science is science. So there's so many pieces that are static, but what we need to do is now we have the information age. We've got all this information out there. Allow them to fix the world's problems with the information you're teaching them. Help them to have a global view of what they're learning and how they can make connections with what they're learning to how they can go and solve problems. And especially history, what's happening in history now? Has that paralleled in any point? What will happen going forward? Right. And so if we allow these tools to help that, they see that, what, this can be beneficial versus those students who always ask, why do I have to take this class?
Mm.
Why am I learning this material? We have to let the internet help us to make those why connections for us.
And I think the key part about what Ms. Harden was saying was that the why is always the question when it comes to engagement, which has been the most difficult part. And if you can't give them a reason of why it's useful, you might as well not bother teaching it because they're like, okay, and they're back on their phones. Like, you haven't explained to me what I'm going to do with this information, how it's useful. The beauty of e-learning is that, back in the day, like you were saying, Ellis, when we had the textbooks, by the
Right.
time it's printed, at the pace the world is moving right now, that's already outdated. And so
Right.
using digital learning, we're able to kind of keep up with the trends and things that are going on. And as an English teacher, yes, English has some basic rules, but language is forever evolving. And, technology allows us to address those things. And I think that it's really important that we are able to focus on the critical thinking as opposed to just memorizing information. Because with critical thinking, then e-learning is not a deterrent. It's not something that gets in the way. It's actually going to be a catalyst with your critical thinking. I think we're coming out of a pattern of just memorizing information and saying, I checked it off. I know this. Okay, well, what can you do with what you know? The world is filled with smart people that know things, but they can't do anything with what they know. And we want problem solvers, as Ms. Willingham was saying. And I think that e-learning allows us to put them in situations where we become facilitators, as opposed to, that age-old term we use, the sage on stage in our field, where we sit back, well, Ms. Braddock, what's the answer to this? I don't know. Let's figure out how we can get that answer. And technology allows us to be able to do that. E-learning allows us to do that.
So you brought up my next question, which was critical thinking, right? And so I know my own education path really didn't get a course on critical thinking until I got to grad school, right? And so how do you incorporate satisfying a curriculum, getting our students the knowledge that they need to know, but also creating critical thinkers where they can apply that why instead of asking you three the why, they could be asking the why with regards to the connection and finding that critical connection between everything that they're trying to learn. How do we incorporate more critical thinking into our, grade schools? And is it widely accepted that critical thinking is just as important as learning the lesson? I'll leave that open for anybody. You can
I
start.
can jump on that. Yes. I think we have to look at critical thinking as being embedded in what we do, as opposed to something separate that we have to figure out how to make it fit with what we have to teach. It's in everything that we do. I have a 3-year-old nephew that I spent a lot of time with over the summers. And of course, that's the, well, why stage. And instead of giving him answers that never satisfy him, because if you all have children or work with younger children at that 3-year-old stage, it doesn't matter how wonderful your answer is. As soon as you finish, the next question is why. But it's not until I have him do something where he has to discover the why that he doesn't ask me again. Now he'll ask me about something else, and then we got to start that process all over. Right. But he's not asking me why about the same thing, because now he's discovered it. So that can happen at every stage of learning in every subject matter. You know, we all learned our multiplication facts. Most of us were taught during an era where we memorized them. What for? Mm-hmm. How do we apply those multiplication facts? What's the difference between 3 times 6 and 6 times 3? Numerically, nothing. But if I've been told to set up a conference room where I'm going to have people working in groups of 3 and I need you to divide them up, that's different than saying I'm going to have them work in groups of 6. And I've got to know how to go into that room and do that. That's critical thinking. So yes, I know 6 times 3 is 18 and that 3 times 6 is 18. But do I understand what that looks like and what that means? That's the critical thinking. That's the why. So I think we have to stop looking at it like it's something separate and actually incorporate it into every stage of learning.
I agree with Ms. Braddock. I hope I spelled it correct. Said it
correct. Call me Dara, please.
Okay, Dara, right. Call me Carmen. Yes. But we have to change the mindset of our, I always say our babies, our students, and we have to force them to not be lazy learners. And what I mean by that is, you know, a lot of times people allow the one-word answers. You ask them a question, even with our own children, if we have children or family members, and we'll say, you know, how was your day? And they say, fine. Well, what was good about it? You know, forcing conversations, because even with the technology that we have now, if you go to a restaurant, or a lot of times I've been to a restaurant, and I'll do it on purpose. I'll look over at someone's table and see, are they interacting with each other? Is there any conversation going on at all? Or do they just order and go right back to their cell phones? Or, you know, and so when I'm with my daughters, I make sure, okay, you're going to be on your cell phones. I know everything is earth shattering and so important on your cell phone, but we're going to also have a conversation, which creates critical thinking. We have to make sure that we ask meaningful, purposeful questions, and that we get meaningful, purposeful answers. And that a lot of time has to be, I won't say forced, but drawn out of our students, because they're so used to the one-word answers or texting instead of actually having conversations. And I think that we really need to make sure that we incorporate public speaking, so they're able to intelligently articulate answers. And so I that's what I think is really, really critical, as far as making sure that we teach our babies or our students critical thinking, not allowing them to be lazy learners.
Right.
So I want to piggyback off of that. You kind of hit nail right on the head. I was assessments, right? So like when it comes to our educators, there are some that can take that like, oh, I can make Canvas or I can make whatever LMS grade for me. So then the educators also, now you got lazy educators, because like, oh, I don't have to grade paper and pencil. It don't have to take me hours and hours to grade. It can just automatically grade. Well, then now the kids are getting all multiple choice. They're not having to show their work. They're not, so it comes to making intentional, formative and summative assessments. The ones that are for a grade, the ones that are not for a grade. Are they getting practice within their LMS or online that allows them to truly process the information? And are we asking them to show us their understanding in more than one way? We got Flipgrid out there now. We got LMS's recorded video. Explain the process. I used to have my students solve this problem, and they wanted like, oh, I can just write it on paper. No. Go to a whiteboard, record with your tablet, explain how you're solving the problem. So then that's showing me that they understand the process, not just what the final answer is, which is all they're hoping for to be graded for, right? So we have to, in order to get that critical thinking out of them, we have to be very intentional how we're assessing them as well.
Oh, y'all dropping some gems. Dara, so now you're in the classroom. We've got digital learning, we've got laptops, we've got computers now, everything's great. How has that changed the way students interact with one another? Because I remember it was, pencils and maybe a spitball here, maybe something. Not saying it was disruptive. I'm just saying,
Well,
but now it is much more connected. Uh,
the last couple years post pandemic have been a difficult transition because we had a lot of students who were so just used to being on their technology, and you can't blame families had to work, and they were at home with their children, were in front of computers, and when they finished with their school day, parents still had a job to do. And sometimes it was go play on get on your phone, get on your iPad. I need that time so that I can finish what I'm doing. And so it created a generation of students that were so used to being connected through the phone that they will sit in the same room and talk to each other via text. I'm like, but you're right here. You're right here. Well, I think so and so has got my this. I was like, well, go ask him. As opposed to like I'm sending you a text, I'm sending you a message. And it's really been a challenge trying to break them out of that technological bubble of let me just text you, let me just email you, let me just whatever other apps they're using. It's not so much Snap anymore, but let me just get this message to, trying to get them back to that human discussion again, but still using the technology. That has been, I think, one of the biggest challenges for me.
I think that I just since COVID, right? Everybody talk about this learning gap, but we also have a socialization gap. Some of these kids, my youngest started kindergarten on the computer. And so I'm like, okay, we're sitting here. My husband's a principal. I'm a specialist. So I'm like helping people on the computer. She's talking to friends, new friends on the computer, then finally meets them months later, right? And then you've got some people who weren't in school for a year and a half because they decided to stay home. And they have socially, academically, may have moved up. But socially, they're like, how do I interact? Some kids were fourth grade, now they're going back to school in sixth grade. That's two different levels of socialization. And so what we have to do with e-learning is making sure that we're very intentional, right? So I am 100% online campus is what I support. So even with our professors, we're like, you have to put in some discussions. Don't just do typing discussions. Make the students get in there and record their face. Make them respond to one another. Make them work in groups online so they still have to collaborate. So it really just is making sure that the computer it's just a vehicle, right? It's not what they're completely dependent on. You have to be very intentional about what you're planning.
So, Carmen, are there any old school methodologies that can still be brought in to the classroom today to kind of be a mix of digital and traditional learning?
I think it's important to couple both the old school and new school, because again, of course, as we know, both ways are good, I'll say. Of course, we have to make sure that we stay up to date on what's popping, with the kids. We have to make sure that they're interested in what we're teaching. That's very important, because if we don't make it meaningful and relevant, then they're just going to zone out. I had an example. I was talking to a student about entrepreneurship, and he said, "Well, I'm sitting here right now on Bitcoin." And I'm making money right now, so I don't need to go to college, or I can just do this. And I said, well, college will help you if you go and you major in business, and that will help you to perfect your craft. Okay, maybe you are doing well in business, word that by going in the classroom or learning from a teacher or expert, the better that you can be in your business. And so that was one example, but a lot of the students now feel like they can do things right now and get there fast, real quick, instead of having to grind and take classes and learn from instructors. And so I think mirroring the two will help. So just making sure that we tell the kids about why things are relevant, teaching them life skills. That's old school, and that'll always be. They'll always need that. Phonics, believe it or not. A lot of our babies cannot read, period. And so, or they can read just a little bit. And I'm speaking to middle and high schoolers right now. And so it's important for us to go, I'm talking about all the way back to the basics, and make sure that we are teaching phonics and how to enunciate and articulate properly. And then maybe we can take that further and maybe have a debate class where they utilize those skills. But they have to learn the basics. And I think going back to the basics is old school, and then bringing it up to current learning methods.
Hooked on phonics. I'm all about that. That's real old school. That was what CDs. Those are CDs, weren't they? I was thinking, oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. So you're absolutely right, and I think Dara, what I'm seeing, the beautiful thing about digital learning and technology is you get answers very quickly, right? The bad thing about digital learning and technology is you get answers very quickly, right? And sometimes you don't learn the discipline. And I think that's what Ms. Carmen was talking about is learning is a disciplined process, right? And yes, we have access to more information, but going through that disciplined process is going to benefit them, even though the information may or may not change. A Tale of Two Cities is going to be a Tale of Two Cities, but the discipline it takes to read the entire book is going to help you later on in life. And so how do we incorporate understanding the speed of technology that has enhanced learning, but also developing discipline in their learning process so they can apply that to other areas of their life?
And I don't know that I have the solution for that yet, because we're still working through that, particularly because it's very difficult even to ask thought-probing questions, and students not use, Chat GPT to find the answer. And, once upon a time, it was just, copy paste, and you could tell when somebody's, Googled something and pasted an answer. But
Right.
because, technology has advanced, you can get answers to higher order thinking questions by just plopping it into, some kind of mechanism. And
Mhm.
so that has been a challenge that we're still working through, because just when you think you get a handle on it, the AI evolves. And it's not something that we have an easy solution to just yet. A lot of it comes back to those in-person discussions. What can you do now that you have this information? What can you do with it? What can you develop? What can you build? I know that we have some courses in our building where we have an educational technology lead teacher, and she has some phenomenal programs, and she's most definitely a facilitator. Her whole thing is, I don't know some of the technology that's in this room, so you're going to have to figure it out and teach it to me. And that's been working very well for us. And she's been inviting a lot of our teachers into her space so that we can do what the students are doing and learn with them, because it's new to all of us. It went from, well, Ms. Braddock, why can't I just use Google Classroom? Or why can't we just have Google Meets? I was like, because when you get out into the business world, nobody's saying, hey, let's jump on a Google Meet and talk. If we're not using WebEx, we're not using Teams, right? So we have to expand what we know outside of what's just comfortable. And a lot of times students and teachers don't like to be uncomfortable. We want to do what we know. And that learning, a lot of us want to know, but that learning process takes a little more time than we really want to give it, because they're in an age where kids get information quickly. If you can't get it to them in the time that they can watch a TikTok video, you're gone. They're done. So we have to make relevant. That's it. You're lucky if you get all three. You're lucky if you get a full. So we have to figure out, how do we take what it is we want them to learn and make them want to learn it. And the only way to do that is to have them do, as opposed to having them just listen. They don't want to hear us anymore. They don't want to hear us anymore. And if they do, they only want to hear us for a very brief amount of time, and then they need to do something. So I don't have the answer to how we solve that, because we're still working through that issue. As AI is getting strangely, it's some of these pictures you can't really tell if you don't look real closely that you're not looking at AI. So as the technology develops, it becomes more of a challenge for us, and we have not quite figured that out yet.
So Ashley, it is, it's come up a couple of times tonight. We're talking about AI. So how do we balance that? And how, as an educator, do we know as it's becoming much more intuitive? I guess that's the way that I've only had a few interactions with AI, but it is very intuitive and it gives some great, it can be a great tool. But how, but as with any tool, if we rely on it too much, it can really impede our progress in terms of our own intellectual abilities because we say, I just dropped the, like as Dar said, I just drop the question there, I get the answer, print that out, and pass it on. But am I really absorbing that information? Am I really playing around with it in my mind? Am I applying critical thinking to that information to take it from what is on that screen to the next level? How do we one, and I know this is, I keep asking you the multi-layered question, but you're the digital person. You should understand. You should be able to go at all that. One, how do we not impede the progress of AI, but get a hold of it to where it's not impeding the education, the learning of our students, and are there mechanisms in place to where students aren't just really is it plagiarism if they just use AI to write a paper? Yes. Okay. So they're not just plagiarizing their way through school, and then they get out and they got a degree, but they can't tie their shoe without Google telling them how to do it.
So I think what's very important for all parents to know and students, if you get caught in college, higher ed, they are kicking students out of school for plagiarism from AI, just like they're doing if you plagiarize another author. So it is just as important. The academic integrity is very important. So you can't just say, oh, AI, I'll just let AI do it. I will say we did an activity with teachers last year to say we gave a prompt that was given to actual students. So we had 2 student responses. We had 2 responses from AI. And we had our teachers analyze those responses to figure out which one was AI and which one were real students. Some got it right, some got it wrong. But what we noticed is AI is not specific. So if you're asked the types of questions and assessments that you're asking, problem-based, that are really requiring the students to give you specifics on how to solve a problem, what data are they getting, ask for citations, because AI is not good at doing citations. And makes you actually have to check the citations, right? So that's part of it. But it's making sure AI is not bad, right? So we also can teach our students to say, you can have an activity. Go put this in AI and see if it gives you the right answer. Then go find all the things that are wrong about it. Have them analyze what AI is doing. So if they can notice that AI is not 100% right, then they also can be like, I probably shouldn't use that for my project paper because I'm trying to get graded correctly, right? So we want to provide them with the skills on how they can use AI, but we also don't want them to be dependent. So it's a really, really difficult balancing act because these younger kids, they don't see far enough in the future what the repercussions can be, right? When they get in college, oh, I've been doing this. What you mean I can't come back to school? What you mean is on my permanent record. So it's really important for them to see how detrimental it could be if they only rely on it, but also see that it can be a helpful tool. So it's training our educators how to use it effectively in class, how they can also incorporate it into their lessons. And it doesn't have to be the bad guy if we don't want it to be.
I think the other thing that we have to remember is that when teachers really know their students, what would be possible for them to say. Like, what your students' levels are. But it comes back to, are we still having conversations in class? Are we having discussions in class? Not just, here's a prompt, here's an assignment, here's a digital tool, get that done, let the computer grade it, and then I'm done. If we're not talking with our students, if we're not having our Socratic seminars, if we're not having class discussions, then we won't know what our students really know on their own. But I know that I can look at writing and say, she didn't write that. She didn't write that. Or I have a student that can write like that. So we really have to know who they are. And we can't do that if our learning is 100% digital. So we have to have those classroom conversations. We have to have those group dynamics and conversations. We have to create projects where they have to work together to solve the answer, because by yourself, you can't get it. And that's, like, it's a challenge. It's a lot more work. I think I'm working harder now that we have technology to do more work for us than I was when it was just all pencil and paper. But it's very necessary, because our students are not the same students we were. And they're not the same learners we were. And they have access to things we didn't have access to. And we have to adjust.
And it goes back to what I stated earlier about having conversations, forcing the students to tell us what they're doing. Because if they are not able to articulate and tell us what they're doing or how they got the answer, if they can't really tell us, then you kind of know maybe they got this from somewhere else, or maybe this wasn't their work. And again, I love what you said about knowing your students. The building relationships piece is huge, because in order for students to be successful, in my opinion, they have to have positive, genuine relationships with the people who they are learning from. And our kids, they know when we're genuine and when we're not. And they respect us more when we're genuine and transparent. And like I said before, if I don't know something, I'll go to one of our students in a minute and say, listen, I don't know this. Can you help me? And they love helping us, because, they love thinking that they telling us something that we don't know, which they do. But you're absolutely right about making sure that you know your students. So I love that you said that, Dara.
So my question is, and with the time that we have left, I know that parents today are different than they were when, let's just say, we were coming through. And so parents, I remember if the teacher called my mama, it was going to be a problem. Okay, it was going to be, all right, now I got in trouble in school, and I'm gonna get a whooping when I got home. Allegedly, I have to say that now because I don't want my mama, I don't know what the statute of limitations are, or the whooping, but allegedly, teachers were believed. Now is these parents, some, not all, some of these parents are going in and challenging the teacher for everything, whether it's a bad grade on the paper, whether it's a bad grade on the report card, whether it's just anything and they are not believing, they are challenging the teachers. So how has that dynamic, that shift has happened? How do we shift it back, or how do we get the teachers to be in that place of respect like they once were for many decades?
I can take this one first. As superintendent / school leader, I make sure that my staff knows that we are on the same team, regardless to whatever situations we're faced. They know that they have my support. We have a united front. I'm not going to embarrass my staff with parents. I'm not going to make them feel like, oh my gosh, we have this meeting, what's going to happen? They know I'm going to support them. They know I'm going to protect them. Now, if we're in a meeting and the teacher is wrong, because there are times where the teachers are not right, or I may feel that they did something wrong, we need to take care of this, we're going to do it after our meeting. But I like to make sure that it's so important for administrators to support their staff. Period.
Yes, I appreciate you. I think that's one of the things I love about my administration is I have support. A lot of things don't even get to me because he handles it before I see it. But I think one of the things to understand is we don't have an agenda for the most part. Now, there's some bad apples in every bunch. I'm not going to get on this, this on God's internet, Beyonce's internet, and say all these teachers are perfect. We are not. But for the most part, teachers are not trying to contact you, call you about things your children are not doing. So if we are contacting you and saying that there's an issue, then we can talk about that. And if we're wrong, then what I tell my students is I may say something that I don't know is a trigger for you. and it upsets you, it embarrasses you, and I don't intend to do it, there's a way to address that with me. And I will apologize to you as publicly as I said it, but there's a time and a place and a way to address that. And the same thing happens with parents. I think that there's this need to protect, which is innate, but understanding that my goal is to see that your child is successful. And it's not always going to be the same as it is at home. Like, my child doesn't do that at home. Well, they're also not sharing my attention with, 30, 40 other kids at the same time either. So that will sometimes change the dynamic. Anybody that has parents of multiple children can tell you that it was different when they had one versus when they had 2 or 3 or 4, however many, in terms of what their child's behavior was like. And so I think it's just really important for parents to understand we want your child to be successful too. So it's just important that when you have a question or a concern, come to us, but not in front of your child, because as soon as you disrespect us in front of your child, you already know what we're going to be dealing with when we get back in the room. I had a child tell me once, I said, do I need to call home? Like, go ahead. You ain't going to want to do that though. And when I call home, he's like, I tried to tell you. And I knew from that day on, any discipline I was going to have with that child, it had to be with the relationship I had with that child, because talking to that parent wasn't going to get me anywhere. And we made it. I didn't know if we were going to make it for a minute. We made it. But the parent and I never did reconnect, because they told me right off the rip, I don't know you. You don't know me. Let's keep it that way. I was like, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay. How do you expect me to help you help your child if that's the relationship you have with me? So we have to learn how to express our opinions, our differences as adults, not in front of the children. And anybody that's a parent that's co-parenting in a relationship with parents, when you all disagree, you can't do that in front of the kids, because they're going to take sides or you'll confuse them. And the same thing happens with parents and teachers.
I think too, I like to come together and have the educator along, the staff person along with the students. I like to actually meet in front of the student. And I make sure that I set boundaries, and everyone knows that you're going to be respectful to one another. All of us are. We're all adults, and then we have the child. We're going to talk this out. And if it gets to the point where it's not respectful, then I end the meeting. It's over. So it's mutual respect. We all have to respect one another and talk whatever out. We can talk it all out, but the minute that it becomes disrespectful, then it's over. And so I've been really successful in that. And I've had very few parents who have not complied, or very few staff members who have not complied to that, because we all just need to be respectful. And once we hear each other and talk it out, there's nothing that we can't solve. So.
And just to add on a little bit, 100% agree, because we have all had them parents that was try to go left real quick. I'm like, I don't want to fail your kid. Like, otherwise I wouldn't have called you. But for parents, if your kid has at their school an LMS or some kind of learning management system where they turn in their assignments, ask your school, how do you get on to be an observer? So if the kid says, I turned this in, you can now log into that system and say, then I would see a submit button, right? So if you can be on as an observer, log into their grades, get all of this stuff, the technology's out there now. There's no more sending home report cards like there was, and we had to get it signed and then bring it back in person. Everything's digital. Everything's an email. Make sure your email is correct, because the information you want first is going to be on the palm of your hand or on your computer screen to verify what your student is saying. And then send that email to get all your receipts, because that's what the teacher's going to do.
Just about the email, I'm going to add one request from parents. It might be a good idea, because I know in the digital age and a lot of people working from home, your emails get inundated. If you set up an account that is just for the school, and your email address can be Bobby so-and-so's mom.com, please be mindful of the email addresses that you all are using to communicate with us. If you could, please, because we've gotten some interesting ones. I was like, yeah, I'm not emailing sexy big mama at Yahoo.com. I'm not doing that. That's not the method of communication we're going to have. If you can simplify it, just this is so-and-so's mom.com, .org, whatever. and just use that one email address to have communications with the school so that you don't miss anything. Because it's very easy, which is why I tell my students, do not submit your work to my email address, because I get so many emails from parents, the district administrators, other teachers, that your assignment is going to get lost in all of these emails. So you may be having the same issue. So I would recommend setting up an email account just to communicate with the school.
And keep your information current. We've had so many situations where we've tried to contact parents for emergencies or to give information, and the telephone numbers are not working, or the email addresses are invalid. So please, parents, make sure that your school has your updated information, and even if it changes weekly, monthly, whatever, please make sure that we have your current information, because that is so important.
I love it. I love it. I feel you. So parents, I'll say it. Y'all can say it. If you got an AOL email address, upgrade. Hotmail, upgrade. Like you need to move up to something that's gonna be connected. Because I see AOL, Hotmail, you've been on there too long. But
Hey, wait a minute, I still use my AOL account. I still do, but I do have Gmail.
Thank you, please. Okay. All right, and our last question for everybody: what's the one thing that you want parents to know about their child in terms of digital learning, and what could how could they help their child enhance their digital learning experience this year and beyond? We'll start with you, Dara.
I would ask them to teach you something. So the chances are they're doing something that you may not have used or have done before. And that can be very intimidating for parents, because we like to know everything our child knows so that we can help them. And we're getting, especially as you start getting to high school, we start tackling issues that we didn't tackle when we were, or we don't remember. Have your child teach you something. And you can start with something really, really small. Like it doesn't have to be even a digital learning tool, anything that they're doing online. Let them show you. Let them, I don't want everybody taking their phones away from their children necessarily, but what are they doing? What can you all do together online? And what can they show you in terms of what you all work on at school? How do you use this app? This is something I'm trying to create. How do you teach me how to do this? So that they know that they have, that you're learning from them as well. Cause that's important, particularly the teenagers who think they know everything, that they can show you something and they love doing it. I mean, even my nephew will tell me, I'll teach you how to do that, TT. I was like, oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And he enjoys that.
That's great. Ms. Carmen?
Yes. Technology, we know, is here to stay. And so it's ever changing. And so we have to make sure that we stay current and communicating with our young people and not being afraid, once again, to say, I don't know how to do this. I drive my daughters nuts. If I don't know, I'd say, can you help me, help me figure this out? Or how do I do this? Or how do I, move this here in this folder? And how do I create this? And they are able to help. And just don't be afraid, parents. If you don't know something, ask your children, because more than likely they know and they can help you, and they find pleasure in helping us. So don't be afraid.
And our e-learning specialist, Miss Ashley.
So I'm going to hit on digital citizenship. So we know we got social media issues on the phones, but they still need to know how to be good digital citizens on their computers. If they have a device that's not a phone, right? How are they going to be responsible online with their peers? And are they going to appropriate websites with their school device, which the schools can see what you're looking at, right? So it's teaching them how to be responsible in every aspect of their life. And then something I teach she's going to 7th grade now, is how do you email appropriately? Not, hey, what's my grade? Where's your salutation? What are you asking for? And then you saying thank you, right? And so it's teaching a different way to communicate, where it's saying go and advocate for yourself, but how do they do that in the digital world appropriately and professionally? And so that's also an opportunity for parents to say, if you need tutoring, you need to go in the morning. You can't just show up at their door. Email them tonight. and let them know you have a question. So it's just helping them to navigate how to advocate for themselves through the digital learning.
I love that. That was fantastic. And I would add my little 2 cents on that. I would say parents, um, be familiar with what your child is on, what they're doing, right? So I'm on TikTok. I don't post TikTok. I don't make no videos, but I'm on there because I need to know what my children are looking at. I'm on Instagram. I'm on social media. I'm familiar with what's happening, what's trending. I listen to the music. All of it I don't like. I still like my OJs and my Earth, Wind, and Fire, but that's me. But I still know what's going on because you have to be able to have a conversation, and you cannot connect with your child. I would say on the other side of that, parents, don't try to do it for your child. I don't want you there with doing the video with your child. Okay, just be responsible. Find that space where you can still be a parent, but understand and give your child the space and room to grow and learn. This has been fantastic. You all were just everything I expected you all to be and more. Thank you so much. If y'all have any questions, please let us know. We'll get back to you. Y'all are more than welcome to come back. We're going to be doing this again. We're going to be doing this throughout the year because there's things that are coming up, and if we have things that are challenging our schools, as we know what's happening in certain states. I'm not going to say like my home state of Florida. I'm going to pray for y'all Floridians. So just please, parents, stay diligent. It is now more than ever. You have to be abreast of what's happening in the classrooms with your students. Your teacher, your child's teacher is there as your ally, is your extension in the classroom. Don't treat them as like an adversary. Treat them as an ally. And if you do that, your child's experience will be better and your experience will be better throughout their education process. So thank you again for joining us, and we're, we're off to the next one. But this has been a fantastic program. Thank you all, and we'll see y'all next time.